So you want me to talk about my first project, the first meaningful one? So I did a piece in Vancouver, and it's in the historic Black neighborhood. That's, I guess, technically now Chinatown, but it was at the time it was called Hogan's Alley. And I didn't even know anything about the history of this place. I just kind of saw that there was a landscape that looked a bit off to me. It looked like maybe something was meant to be developed, but it never got finished. And basically what it is it's a green space in Vancouver where there's a viaduct that goes over this neighborhood. And then there's a big green kind of grassy area that comes down from that viaduct. It's like a freeway. And I got really interested in that location. I started looking into it more, and I realized that it was once a predominantly Black neighborhood, and it was a place where a lot of people who worked on the rail yards had lived, and they had houses. But I thought, well, why aren't those houses there anymore? And what had happened was in the 1970s, the city of Vancouver decided to build a freeway through the Black neighborhood, which is something that was happening all through North America, and they considered it a blighted neighborhood and a neighborhood that didn't really deserve to be protected. And there was actually a big resistance movement. I found it just had this really rich history, and it all started just because I saw this green space that didn't really seem to make sense, because it's an underused green space. And what I ended up doing was I found this collective called the Hogan's Alley Memorial Project, and it's a group of people who are working to historicize the Black history in Vancouver. And so everything just started to fall into place, and I realized that we could do a kind of commemorative project in this particular landscape. It's in this one area. And what we decided to do was we planted a bunch of flowers to spell out the words "Hogan's Alley welcomes you." You know, when you see like city signage and it says "Welcome to Vancouver," it might say "Welcome to Port of Spain." But we did that for this neighborhood that had a name that people had forgotten. And so we decided that instead of asking for the city's permission to do that, we went ahead and I just bought a bunch of flowers, like 2,000 flowers, and they're red flowers, and we cut out these shapes of the letters. And the thing is, it was huge. Each letter was like 5 feet tall. So the whole thing was probably about 100 yards long. And we just went on a Sunday afternoon. There were about 10 of us, some of them from the Hogan's Alley Memorial Project, and some of them were just local neighbors. And we just started digging into the earth, and we planted all these flowers, and we had this like big, beautiful sign that said "Hogan's Alley welcomes you." And it looked really official. And we didn't get in trouble or anything. I mean, it was kind of like an act of graffiti in a way. And that project was so exciting to me because it was the first time I really, intervened in an actual landscape. And it was the first time I ever directed a collaboration with a bunch of people, and that was in 2007. And ever since then, I feel like all my work has been collaborative, and I've always wanted to be kind of a director of these bigger projects. So, yeah. Tomorrow night, I'll be doing a screening at Alice Yard, which is a gallery and a music space and an artist residency. And I've been staying there for the last 2 months. I've also been working at Granderson Lab, where we're at today. And the project is a series of slow motion videos and animated photographs. And all of them are in some way a documentation of performances. So these aren't live performances, but what I've been doing is been getting different collaborators to do, say, a gesture in outdoor space or indoor space, and all of these gestures are kind of repeatable. And so each one of the documents, like a video or an animated GIF or animated photograph, is something that plays out of it. So I'll be doing a 20-minute film that is made up of a series of videos that all loop, and all of them are slow motion. And then in the gallery space, I'll also be showing these animated GIFs that play over and over and over. And one of the things that I've been interested in is trying to find a way to talk about slowness and redundancy, and also a sense of futility, because although it sounds kind of negative, it's one of the first things I noticed when I came to Trinidad, was that everyone was talking about how frustrated they were with a corrupt government, how frustrated they were with how slow everything moves, being stuck in traffic, feeling like any kind of positive change is futile because there's always these barriers, whether they're barriers from the government or barriers culturally. And not to say that that has to be the case, and I don't necessarily want to perpetuate that with the artwork, but I feel like it's a sense of frustration that a lot of people feel here, and so all the artworks in some way respond to that. All of the performances respond to that. And I think what we start to see in these very, very short videos and very short animated GIFs is that all of the characters, all of the performers, they're kind of in a frustrated state within the frame. But I hope that that offers a possibility to imagine an alternative, right? So I was really interested in the form of the animated GIF because it's not a resolved narrative. You know, we're used to seeing in other forms of cinema, you'd see a beginning, middle, and end, where you see an actual arc of a story. Even in nonlinear films, we see some sort of structure, right? But with a GIF, there's no structure, right? There's so little structure that it's almost meditative, right? And I think that there's something powerful about the meditative space or the contemplative space of a looping GIF or a looping video. So that's why I've been making that kind of work. So, even though the screening is tomorrow night, I'm still shooting video as of today. So everything's like real hot off the press. And this morning I had a friend of mine do a very brief performance just outside the studio where we're working. What I did was I had him go across the street where there's a white wall, and I gave him a can of white spray paint. And what I had him do was paint a circle, kind of a big circle around his body with this white spray paint, so you can't actually see the paint show up on the wall. So it looks like a bit of a redundant gesture. It's also a gesture that can be repeated over and over when we do that in post-production. So you just see him endlessly painting this circle on the wall over and over, and you don't actually see any image left behind. And one of the things I think that does is that emphasizes the gesture. We're not actually looking at what he's spray painting, so we don't necessarily see it as graffiti, but we see it as a gesture of kind of reacting to that wall or responding to that wall. And it doesn't necessarily have any political meaning per se, but I think that it's interesting to think about what happens when you have a gesture that defeats itself and also repeats itself. So that's what we did this morning, and I'm just editing it now to put it in the final cut for the film. So I'm cutting it really close to the wire here. Internet, you know? So I make an internet version, and then I'll go in and take those same stills, and then I'll make a filmic version. So it still looks like an animated GIF, but it's actually an MOV file. Anyway, it's just technical stuff. So I'm really interested in having, the show tomorrow, there will be a proper screening where we literally are projecting a film at a big white wall. People will be seated and facing that. But behind them, there will be a flat screen monitor in a gallery that is playing these animated GIFs. And that could loop infinitely, potentially, right? So I like seeing the tension between different forms of cinema. You know, if we could look at something that is actually moving in time, you know, we see something progress moving in time, and then we see something that is almost stuck in time. Like the difference between having an animated GIF, which is only 2 frames, or having a video, which was going to be thousands of frames, right? So I like positioning the audience in between those 2 forms, and just to see what kind of reaction there might be. So yeah.